Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by ENC.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. And this is going to be one of those shows where a podcast talks about another podcast. The biggest news story in South Africa in the last 24 hours has been about the Open Chats podcast. It's 4 young South Africans with a very successful YouTube channel, over 400,000 subscribers, who have landed themselves in incredibly hot water after a viral clip recently surfaced showing them saying really racist and deeply harmful things about colored people, colored South Africans. Since that viral video surfaced, the ANC actually just denounced it. DA says they're going to take the podcast to the Human Rights Commission. And so we need to talk about podcasting again, about whether or not podcasting should be regulated, whether or not podcasts should be affected by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa, much like legacy news media. Newsflash, I think the conversation needs to move beyond the BCCSA at this point and start talking about changing our law and our justice system to handle the fact that virtually every person now has the tools through their phones and the internet to be incredibly defaming, spread bigotry and disinformation to literally countless people on the internet, and that needs to be addressed and dealt with in our law. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the show. As always, you can watch and catch the full show in visual in only one place. It's enca.com. Click on the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. And while you're there, you can also click on the link to the 3beaniesnetwork.com, where there's all kinds of fabulous merchandise that people are buying related to settling down, brother, and all the good stuff from the 3 Beanies universe. All right, let's get into the WhatsApp line and the YouTube comments. And first, we have to start. Someone messaged the WhatsApp line for the first time, 0607-613-436, a brand new recorder. Didn't send a name, but the name in the WhatsApp kind of like bio that they sent for a brand new number was Toast Seegers. So that is what we'll be calling them. Toast first sent us what appears to be the lyrics to a song about the Quarter Report. And then he sent us that song.
Turn it up, what we gonna watch, you see. The Quarter Report at the watch party. The plot holes here could swallow up a taxi. So settle down, brother, please.
Low-key though, lyrics really good. Like they're objectively good. 3 Beanies are on Micah's Hot. The yours are yours, your off the chart, connecting the dots they thought we forgot. Welcome to the watch party. With come join Dan and Eric, James, George, and Cyril. I love the fact that you were classified as one of the animals on the show. It's Dan and Eric, and then James, George the cat, and Cyril the squirrel.
Listen, I've been referred to as an animal before, you know. So.
Wow. So let's talk about one of the biggest podcasts in South Africa. The Open Chats podcast, if you don't know, has 419,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's a cast of young South Africans who basically go online once or twice a week and do a long form kind of panel. They're all just sitting in a set on couches. They sometimes have guests and they just kind of talk about whatever. And they do kind of sell themselves in the description of this podcast is intended for entertainment and comedic purposes. While jokes and commentary may touch on sensitive topics, there is no malicious intent behind any of the content. The goal is humor, not harm. Listener discretion is advised. Now, the goal is humor, not harm, is what we're going to focus on today, because it turns out the Open Chats podcast was extremely, extremely harmful earlier this week. You may have seen that they have been absolutely lambasted and taken to task for frankly just saying racist comments about colored people. So direct quotes from a viral clip that came up. The hosts referred to colored people as incestuous, crazy, and alleged that they sleep with their siblings. So that video has since been deleted. The hosts later issued an apology. The hosts' names are Mthokozisi, Sonwabile Lefa, and Busisiwe. And obviously, since then, All manner of political parties, including the DA and the PA, have spoken out with absolute condemnation of those comments. Some parties have moved to report the podcast to the South African Human Rights Commission. The Patriotic Alliance has filed charges against the Open Chats podcast, and they've issued an apology for these unbelievably offensive derogatory remarks. Now, I don't know in what context that could be seen as humor, not harm. And I know that sometimes humor and harm can both happen from something. Something can be humorous to many people and harmful to other people. But I just think that those are self-evidently bigoted, divisive, cruel things to say. And the outrage is completely justified from 4 young people who are just South Africans, who have a talent for the internet, a talent for conversation that people find entertaining or at least watchable. They've got tremendous success, 419,000 subscribers. I actually learned this morning that I thought this was the first time that they'd come to my attention. This is actually the second time they'd come to my attention, because I made a TikTok a little while ago before the election about this clip from their show where they said, if the EFF wins the election, the DA will make Cape Town a new country, or at least one of the speakers on that show said that. The others, kind of from a place of shock but ignorance, no counterfactuals, just said like, oh no, but why would that happen? And that speaker said, well, it's because the DA wants to do this and because Malema wants white people out of the country. Now, that is both not humor, that's not funny, and that is very harmful, because those two things are both completely untrue and always have been. One, Julius Malema has never, ever, even a single time said that he wants all white people to be out of the country. And two, the DA has never said that they want to separate Cape Town from the rest of South Africa. They have never supported nor been deeply involved in nor aggressively advocated for a part of the country to leave the country and the DA to leave with it. So those things are just two absolutely fundamentally untrue things. Now, again, not humorous. Now, you could just say, oh, these are ignorant young people, they didn't know better. But the problem is, with the size of the audience that they have, when they say something like that, that creates harm, because that's very real damaging disinformation in a context where lots of viewers and listeners may go, oh, okay, that must be true, never fact check or follow up. And suddenly these two harmful, untrue beliefs about Julius Malema and the EFF as a whole, and about the DA in Cape Town, spread amongst people. And that informs whether they vote, it informs who they vote for, and it informs the reputation of these people in the country. And this obviously, because these are now two incidents, one is expressively racist and cruel and causing outrage, and the second one is rampant disinformation. Now, to be fair to them, that's only two examples that I am aware of from many, many, many videos that they've put out. They've actually released 336 videos. So I'm not saying that that's the norm, but we need to have another conversation. And this is not going to be a conversation about how to regulate podcasts, because I think that we're beyond that, right? Sure, we can maybe make podcasts form part of the BCCSA, where you have to answer to the same standards as traditional legacy media, like a TV channel or a radio station or a newspaper. That seems obviously like something that is worth investigating. But it immediately is going to end up in trouble. Because how do you then define what a podcast is versus all other kinds of content on the internet? Would it suddenly be that the BCCSA fields complaints from people who are upset about individual TikTok videos or short form video clip cut downs from conversations that may or may not be podcasts? The nature of the internet is that the content is so wide ranging, but all fundamentally comes down to video or still or words in a variety of time, a variety of length of content time, that it will be extremely hard to regulate. I think, specifically if we think of what the court case Minnie Dlamini is taking against MacG right now, and this, we need to start thinking about this differently, having a different kind of conversation. We need to talk about the fact that South Africa's laws are not yet up to date with, they have not evolved with the internet, which means that things like defamation suits and defamation cases, which is kind of what this is, or explicit bigotry or racism or rampant harmful disinformation, we know as a legal system how to deal with that in public with people on the street or on traditional legacy media, but we don't yet have laws in place to regulate and create standards for what happens when that kind of information and those kinds of utterances happen on the internet, right? And so that law needs to develop such that people can take cases and be protected and get compensation, or there can be justice served against people who use tools on the internet to express lies, defame people, or spread very harmful disinformation. For me, what needs to happen in this country is a radical fast tracking of these kinds of cases. Because in the old days, before everybody had the internet and access or the tools to rapidly spread information very fast, there were very few moments where real defamation could happen because there were very few people who had access to legacy media or a public mouthpiece that a lot of people would hear, which meant that with fewer cases of defamation, the courts could handle defamation cases. But now, with everybody creating and speaking so much into the world through the internet, what you need is rapid solutions. You need rapid case processing. You need maybe a dedicated court that literally handles this kind of stuff. They need to move incredibly fast. Remember, all the evidence is on the table. It's just like, does this video break our laws? Does this video defame? Does this video or this podcast or this audio clip or whatever contravene regulations around defamation or spreading of harmful disinformation or just harmful information overall, so that it can happen quickly? Because our court system is already overwhelmed, and there are so many instances like open chats with colored people or Minnie Dlamini with MacG. Those are the high-profile ones that, because they're high-profile, could get through a court system quite quicker than others. But because this is happening all the time, and it has real ramifications, defamation, disinformation, and bigotry, you need a system which can rapidly process those cases to get justice that will then cause people to think, wow, I really need to think before I post this video online in case it is bigoted or spreads harmful disinformation or defames someone, because there'll be real consequences if I do that. Because of course, we want to protect freedom of expression, and we want to protect freedom of speech, but we also want there to be consequences for people who violate that right.
We are sort of in a Wild West situation with the internet right now, where there's so much new stuff. There's so much explosions. Like if you think initially there were a couple of big people like MacG et al. Who were like tentpole people, but then not much in between those people.
Much like legacy media.
Now we have this flowering. We have this blooming of all of South Africans on the internet,
and that's good,
which is fantastic. Yes, but that comes with its issues. That comes with its problems. And I think to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of this podcast, but what I do see from the clips that I've seen, they are replicating an American style of podcasting, which a lot of us do. But when you replicate something without fully understanding it, you get to very complicated issues. You develop very complicated issues, and you get into trouble.
They understand it perfectly. Sure. And they know that hyper-inflammatory comments are good PR. Obviously, they're being hyper-criticized right now, but we're talking about them, and we should talk about them, by the way. I don't think I'm giving them undue attention. I think this has to be spoken about. But, that time-old model, Taylor Slaughter's time model, created and championed by Howard Stern from the United States in the 90s and replicated a lot of times, the inflammatory shock jock, who says provocative, often offensive, divisive things to get talkability that gets them attention. That is a model that works. You and I often talk, and Eric often talk, about the kinds of material we could do that would make our numbers way bigger. And we personally have chosen not to do that kind of content. But that doesn't mean that it's always bad content. It's just content we don't want to do. But other people choose to do this kind of material, and then they do very well. And they maybe think, wow, this is actually just a worthwhile sacrifice to make in terms of some criticism and backlash to get far, far bigger exposure overall.